Good afternoon. This is Vince Petrecca. Welcome to this next session of today's Higher Ed webinar. I head up the sales, partners, and customer success teams at PreVeil, and with me is
Noel Vestal. Hi. For those of you who don't know who I am, I'm the Chief Compliance Officer here at PreVeil, and I've also implemented the 110 NIST 171 controls at the organization I was at before I came here. So happy to talk about this today.
very good. And today our focus is going to be on a cost-effective path to CMMC compliance for higher ed. And we'll be a little more specific in this session about PreVeil and what the PreVeil solution brings to the table overall for you. So again, thanks again for joining. Let's go ahead and get started. So one of the things, the key thing that makes PreVeil itself a cost-effective path to CMMC compliance is the fact that it's really a complete solution overall. Yeah, PreVeil itself, when we started 10 years ago, was really a very secure encrypted email and file storage and sharing program. That's what we started with. But that's not all you need for CMMC compliance. So first of all, we had to take our platform and make sure that it met all the requirements for CMMC so that when you work with PreVeil that you've got all that in there already. So with PreVeil, we went through the process. We've got our FedRAMP moderate equivalency all set. We've got our DFARS C through G attestation in place. We meet the incident reporting, media preservation requirements. We meet the encryption requirements, the FIPS 140-2 validation that is done by NIST, and we meet the State Department requirements for ITAR as well. So those are the table stakes, sort of high-level requirements that you need in a platform that's going to support CUI, and in our case, ITAR as well. But also important with PreVeil is that our system and the way it works, the way the user controls are in place, the administrative functions that are there allow you to support partially, at least, if not pretty much inherited, 102 of the 110 NIST CMMC controls. So with PreVeil, you're not only getting a very secure system, but you're getting one that immediately accelerates your status from a compliance standpoint, helps you move forward more quickly. But that's not enough either. There's still a lot more on top of that. There's 110 controls. And in fact, there's 320 assessment objectives. Noel's going to get into that a little later and how we manage that. It's a big number. And we want to whittle it down for our customers, whether they're defense contractors, research universities, private colleges that are engaged in doing research projects for the DoD, et cetera. So we've built over the last several years a very detailed set of documentation and videos and instructions and guidelines around how to help you go through the CMMC program. And Noel's going to show you that in detail in a few minutes. That's the most exciting part of what we have to share with you today. But, this is going to cover all 110 controls, all 320 assessment objectives, because we know that it's more than just the platform. It's more than storing things in a DFARS 712 compliant manner. It's making sure you can achieve full compliance. So we're going to show you how we do that. And then also, you're definitely going to need partners here. You're going to need other individuals or companies to assist. At the very least, you will need a C3PAO, an assessor, to actually assess you for your CMMC level 2 compliance. You can choose your assessor. It's one of the kind of the interesting aspects of this. You don't just kind of like someone doesn't assign one to you and they go and quiz you and go through the assessment. You get to pick, and we work with about a third of the authorized assessors that are out there today. Where we work with more than that, but we have about 30 of them that are actually our preferred partners that we work with. They're familiar with PreVeil. They understand our encryption model. They understand the documentation that I just mentioned to you in our learning management system. So when you work with them, you're working with someone that's already familiar with how PreVeil works, what we do, what we offer our clients. So that's going to make it a little faster, easier, hopefully less expensive for you as you go through that process. But there's more to that. You may want a partner that's a managed service provider to help you with some of the aspects of managing your CMMC compliance. You may want a registered practitioner or an RPO, registered practitioner organization, that can help you with some consulting. Maybe you want them to help you create some documentation. Maybe you've got some thorny aspects to your compliance situation. You have other servers maybe that are in scope, or servers outside of systems outside of PreVeil that you need to bring into your scope. You need some assistance with that. Well, we've got just a whole bunch of great consulting and service partners in this space that we can recommend for you to really make this easier for you as you go through the process. So between our platform, the compliance accelerator that Noelle's going to take you on a tour of, and our partner community, we provide you full end-to-end coverage of the support that you need to get you through to a perfect 110 score. All right, so just briefly on PreVeil, what we offer from a platform perspective. File storage and sharing, we call it PreVeil Drive. Very easy to use. You're going to have a browser view to be able to manage that. It's a lot like a Dropbox or a OneDrive. You can also selectively sync if you wish, or if your administrator allows it, you can sync content to File Explorer, and you can work with everything inside of File Explorer, manage it in there. We'll maintain all the changes, all the versions in the AWS GovCloud, where we'll store all your content fully encrypted, fully meeting all those DFAR 7012 requirements. And then on the email side, we've again got a browser view for your encrypted email, but we have a nice integration with Outlook. We have a very nice integration with Gmail as well. So if you want to use those every day and you want to make it easier to access your PreVeil encrypted content, it'll be right there for you in those tools. Optionally, you can add mobile devices. That might be interesting in some higher ed applications for sure. And for all of this, this is all included in our standard low prices for our licenses. There's no additional cost for these extra capabilities that I just mentioned. But I will mention that we have been selected by a fairly neutral source out there, PC Magazine. So we've been the editor's choice of PC Magazine for 5 years in a row as their choice for encrypted email and file sharing. So kind of nice to have that accolade. All right, I'm just going to use this slide as a transition as I hand this off to Noelle to take you through the compliance accelerator and PreVeil's 10 steps to CMMC. She's going to dive into really all these videos that she's done with our C3PAO partners, how we really make that pre-filled documentation available so it has the most value for you. And then on top of all this, by the way, you get one-on-one access with Noelle or members of her team that have our CCAs, CCPs, CMMC certified assessors, or CMMC certified professionals that can help you if you get stuck along the way. Noelle can start here. The next slide is the 10-step journey.
Perfect. So thank you so much, Vince, for all that additional information for everybody out there who's listening. So exactly like Vince was saying. So the accelerator was born out of our compliance documentation package that we've had for quite some time. First, we had our technology, then we had our compliance documentation. And over the months and honestly over the years, we had a lot of customers who said, hey, this compliance documentation is great. Can we have more? Because I don't know what to do next. I can't tell you how many times I've had a conversation with a customer or a prospect who says, well, what's my first step? What's my next step? What do I do after that? How do I get this? How do I basically get my arms around everything that is compliance with CMMC? And thus was born the Compliance Accelerator. So this is what we consider the 10 steps to compliance with PreVeil. And then there's a preliminary step you notice at the very top. You want to have a place to secure all of your CUI. So something like, for example, PreVeil, you need something compliant, a compliant platform, and you can't use a commercially off-the-shelf product. Like, for example, Microsoft Commercial is a good example of one that you could not use for this. But with PreVeil, you absolutely can. We're going to jump into the accelerator a little bit now. So I'll just take the screen real quick and we'll talk a little bit more in depth about these 10 steps. And then I'm actually going to walk through an example control just to help everybody understand exactly how amazing all this documentation is and how it works together. So you're seeing now the PreVeil Accelerator. So we have a bunch of extra steps here. This is honestly, a lot of these steps came from customers who were saying, hey, well, how do I secure my endpoint? I don't know how to do that. I understand that I'm using PreVeil plus a commercial 365, but I know I still have responsibilities to make that endpoint compliant. So we created an entire course dedicated to securing your endpoint, including information step by step. And you'll see step by step, hey, what kind of controls are met with these different endpoint protections? How do I install PreVeil? Here are some instructions. How do I make sure that I have hard drive encryption? We even have how to enable MFA and step-by-step guides on how to set up different elements of endpoint protection within the 365 environment. So this is a very large document, super helpful. We've had a lot of great feedback from customers. So if you're out there and wondering how you're going to secure your endpoint, might be something to think about. So let's hop over to the actual 10 steps themselves. We've got our first step right here. This is by far the most important step you will take in your compliance journey. I can't say it enough. I'll say it a million more times. You can't protect what you don't know where it is, right? So scoping your boundary is asking you all kinds of different questions. You'll see there's a video here with me explaining everything. There's also a document that's attached to that asking you different questions. How would I scope my boundary? What should I be looking at? How should I be thinking about it? It also gives you a level of effort. This is an estimated amount of time it's going to take you, depending on whether or not you think you're a low level of effort, a medium, or a high, which is really nice. Every single step has a document like this that you can walk through with all of the information, questions to ask yourself, so you don't feel like you're going to be missing anything. And we're going to hop over now to the documentation, just skip a couple steps here and go to our documentation section. This is the one that people usually get the most excited about. If anybody can get excited about compliance documentation, this would be the time to see it. You'll see here again the same setup. You still have a video with me, still a document. You can have the slides as well. We also have our shared responsibility matrix. Vince was discussing how there are different controls that we cover and ones that we don't. This shared responsibility matrix goes into detail explaining, okay, well, what kind of responsibility does the customer have versus what responsibility do we have? How are they intertwined? We also have our system security plan, which I'm going to jump to in a moment. But we also have all of this procedural documentation. You can see just for the first family, there are, 7 different documents for one family. And what we're actually going to talk about in a moment when I give an example for the control that we're going to discuss is how all of these different documents really do interplay with each other. I get the question all the time, well, how many controls is an asset and inventory list going to check off? More than you'd think, actually, because there's quite a few different places where an asset and inventory list is going to be populated within your SSP and within your CMMC guidance and your documentation. So we'll talk about that in a moment. But on top of all of this documentation that we have, which is already pre-written, by the way, for an example company that we invented called Acme, because why not? So our Acme company, this is all of their documentation that they supposedly created in order to get their assessment completed. We also have a ton of other information, like, for example, a prime to contractor compliance questionnaire. This is direct customer feedback that we received. A customer said, hey, I have subcontractors. I'm a prime. How do I communicate with them what they need to do for CMMC? I need something simple. And so we created it. We are constantly updating all of the information inside the accelerator based on the feedback and any sort of, comments and information we get from our customers and our prospects. And with that, I'm going to stop for just a second, and we're going to walk through an example control. So as I said just a moment ago, when you have one control, you'd think to yourself, well, there's probably just one control. It's not attached to anything else. I don't need to worry about any other documentation. So let's, for the sake of argument, we're going to look at Acme's SSP. So this is our example company's SSP. It's already completed for what they want to do. This happens to be incident response. The control number is 3.6.3, testing the organization's incident response capability. There's only one objective here, so you think this would be pretty easy, right? There's not going to be very much we have to do with this at all. And notice, we've got very high-level information here, tells you stuff, but wait, what is this here? Well, it looks like there is another document that is being referenced within the SSP. And it looks like that is the standard operating procedure for the incident response. So if we have a standard operating procedure, and I happen to be a certified CMMC assessor, if I read this for Acme and I say, oh, well, I need to go look at that document then. So now I'm going to bring up that document. And when I look at this document, and you'll see this is our example company, very small company, 20 employees, only 5 have CUI access. When I jump into this, you see there's Acme. You've got all this information at the front, executive authority being given. We've got signatures. Remember, documentation isn't final until there's a signature right there of somebody who's actually in charge of that documentation. So it's important. We have version history. Obviously, this is all fake information, but good to have it. So now, as an assessor, I'm looking in here. Okay, well, I see you've got, different locations it applies to. Okay, well, this is how you deal with incident response. I need to know about training. Let me see. Maybe there's going to be some sort of training in here. Oh, look, well, now I know who the incident response team is. I know exactly who's going to be needing to have that training. Okay, great. This tells me all of the people that I need to make sure and ensure are getting trained to test the capability of instant response for acne. That's information that wasn't in the SSP, but is vital for me to have as an assessor. The reason why it's so great having it outside of this SSP is I don't have to update the SSP every time this group of people changes. I can go ahead and change anybody out here as many times as I need, and I'm only updating this one document instead of having to update the SSP in who knows how many different places. So it makes it a lot easier that way. And we're going to scroll down through all this information. And again, as an assessor, I don't really need all this right now. I need to look at the testing of the capabilities. And so when I do that, we're going to go into, oh, look at that. There's a whole section talking about incident response tabletop exercises. It also tells me that there is an example of a tabletop exercise. I'm going to go look at that because remember, the one objective that we had was to test the organization's response. I want to see how they're doing that. So now I'm going to open up that file. So now here we go. We have the Acme Incident Response Tabletop Exercise, all completed, all ready to go. There's information in here. There's a flow as to how this training should go, information on the steps to take. This is their internal information that was already in that incident response SOP document, but we have it here as well to refresh everybody. And then you actually have guidelines and real examples of ways that you can test incident response. This is already built in. This is already a part of the accelerator. You could use this as is if you wanted to. Well, now what if as an assessor, I want to make really sure people have actually done these different testing. Maybe they haven't actually gone to this training. How do I know? Right, it's great that I have the information, but how do I know if those people that were listed in the SOP actually did their training? Well, that's going to be another document from a completely different family, which is interesting here and what we've talked about. So this, as you see, is actually from awareness and training. It's the training tracker. So this is every person who is inside of Acme who needs to have different types of training. There's training for, as you see, Microsoft, and then CUI administration, PreVeil administration, and right here, incident response team. So Jane Smith happens to be doing quite a bit of training, as you see, because not only is she a Microsoft administrator, a general company employee, CUI administrator, PreVeil administrator, she's also a member of the incident response team. So she is expected as a member of that team for once a year. She has to complete this. If you see here, it's been completed. Here's the next time that happens, and she attended. So this gives you a full, and me as an assessor, a full and complete understanding of exactly what happens with that one control and that one objective. And with that, I will turn it over to you, Vince.
That was really good. Thanks, Noelle. Loved how you went through that entire control and showed what an assessor would be thinking, what they're looking for, and how the PreVeil materials are designed to follow that flow. So that's, having that type of expertise within the PreVeil team has enabled us to create this content that's so valuable for our customer base.
Absolutely.
All right. Yeah, I mentioned before about, PreVeil. So we talked about the PreVeil platform. We've now did a pretty good, quick, but deep dive into a part of the compliance accelerator, getting you a sense for how helpful it can be in actually moving you toward CMMC compliance, right? Not just starting it, but actually moving through that process, following our 10-step process, or, if you want to make it 8 or 12, go ahead. But either way, a lot of what we've got is going to be very useful to you. And our partner network I mentioned before, you can go right on our webpage now and look at this, right? Here's the webpage. I sorted based on assessors, but you can sort on managed service providers. You can sort on RPs, RPOs, and look at these. But even better, we have a partner team at PreVeil. And as a customer of ours, you'll contact our partner team and say, here's the kind of partner I'd like. Here's my situation. I'm a higher ed institution in this part of the country. I've got this many users. These type of systems are involved in the scope of my CMMC assessment. Who are some partners that could best help me with this situation? Or which of your C3POs would you recommend? Which of your C3POs have worked with your higher ed customers before, which we've had, which is good news. So anyway, that kind of thing. And we can give you that sort of expert opinion on that. You're not just going to have to go pluck them off a website. We make it available on our website. We'd like to give that exposure to our partners for sure. But as a customer, you come to us and we'll help you curate even within that list and get you the best possible options. Okay, so in summary, PreVeil has a lot of customers in the space at this point, probably over 1,700 defense contractors, tier one universities, private colleges, et cetera, that have used PreVeil. Not all of them have achieved perfect 110 scores. We do have over 20 110 perfect scores, which is really excellent. And our average customer is saving a lot of money with all these techniques that we've showed you today. Using PreVeil with our less expensive licenses, maintain your current solution. If you're using Microsoft 365 EDU, you can keep using that. Use PreVeil just for those individuals within your compliance boundary that need to protect CUI. Use PreVeil as your vault for managing your CUI and ITAR content. This can save you tens of thousands of dollars as you go through this process, as well as a lot of time. So anyway, we have a lot of case studies of our customers that have gotten 110s already. It's certainly, a valuable thing to know. We're now putting out a lot of customers that are achieving this status. Just real quick before we wrap up, obviously the PreVeil website's a great place to go if you'd like more information. If you want to send an email, sales@preveil.com. If you'd like to reach Noelle and her team, complianceinfo@preveil.com. Feel free, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. We look forward to working with you in the near future, helping you on your CMMC journey. I think we're going to move to the Q&A momentarily.
Thank you, Vince and Noelle. Really appreciate the insightful presentation, giving us an inside view of the accelerator and walking through our proven 10-step solution there, Vince. I would like to introduce Jamie, who's on the compliance and the partner team here at PreVeil. Maybe, Jamie, if you don't mind kind of giving a short introduction, and from there, we will jump right into Q&A. And so feel free to ask any questions.
Sure. Thanks, Seth. I'm Jamie Loopold, Director of Channels and Alliances at PreVeil, also a CMMC certified professional. So I support both our partners and our customers when it comes to anything CMMC compliance related.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jamie. I see one question here. How much should I expect to spend on CMMC? And perhaps we can break that up into two pieces. Maybe, Vince, you can start with a little bit of an overview of PreVeil solution and how you think about that cost, and then Noelle, perhaps, or Jamie, perhaps you can kind of get into some of the other costs that may be associated with the assessment.
Sure. I'd say a few words about that. I mean, obviously this depends, right? The scope of the CMMC project, the number of users that are in the compliance boundary, some of the details of how you plan to implement this and monitor this and manage this. It can vary significantly. I will say from a PreVeil perspective, we know that our licenses PreVeil tend to be significantly less expensive than some of the other options that are out there today. And that's on purpose. We're developing a solution that, whether it's for budget conscious higher ed institutions, whether it's defense contractors that don't have unlimited budgets, that want to, achieve this important compliance mandate, that they can do that without breaking the bank. And the efforts we're taking around Compliance Accelerator, on curating partners who can give you more streamlined responses and solutions, is all part of our sort of broad methodology of helping you achieve CMMC compliance at a lower cost. We do have packages, initial packages, including the access to the Compliance Accelerator, a set of licenses, and your onboarding and training that start at $5,000 for the first year. So, there's ways that we can get this started for organizations at a very cost-effective level.
And I would just chime in and say too that Vince is absolutely right. It really depends. When we were just talking about in our last session, when I was saying that scoping is the most important step, this is a big reason why. Whatever your scope is really does determine in a lot of ways how much money you're going to spend. So, for example, if you have 100 endpoints, meaning 100 laptops or desktops or whatever that are in scope versus 10, it's probably going to be a little bit more involved having 100 endpoints than 10. So that's a good example. How many systems you have that are going to be interacting with CUI, how many people, how many facilities. it's just endless the number of things. So really what we always say all the time, and again, this is one of those things I've said a million times, but scope down as much as you can. That's where cost effectiveness can be really impactful. Use solutions like PreVeil that are cost conscious, that we, like Vince said, we create everything at PreVeil with cost conscious customers in mind. That's all that we do. So absolutely, we're really the best place to come for that type of help, I think, personally. Anything you want to add, Jamie?
No, I guess the only thing I would add is, I think we have a cost estimate calculator on the website. Is that right, Seth? Maybe
Yeah,
put a
that's right
link
up. Put it in. Yep,
Yeah,
absolutely.
that's a good point. Yep, there's a cost calculator on the website. You can check that out. And also, of course, if you talk to us here at PreVeil, we can help you as you talk through your specific situation, and provide you a specific information about what the cost would be from a PreVeil perspective. We could also recommend partners if you want to have some of our partners about some assistance within the other aspects of the project.
Vince, I know that some universities also deal with ITAR data. Perhaps you could just mention how PreVeil can help in some of these other compliance frameworks.
Yeah. ITAR tends to show up all over the place. It does. People who think maybe they've got CUI that isn't really ITAR tend to find out that they do have ITAR. Just like people who think they may only be ITAR end up finding they overlap with controlled and classified information. So having a solution like PreVeil that inherently supports both of those is really valuable. You may have only one or the other right now, but that doesn't mean in 3 years you'll be in that situation. And you'd hate to have to change out your system at that point to handle a contract that includes one or the other. But from an ITAR perspective specifically, which is based on the State Department requirements, there's a few key things that PreVeil offers that will help support that. So, all PreVeil data is stored in continental United States in our AWS GovCloud facilities. We do use FIPS validated cryptography in our solution, and so we meet the encryption requirements. All the facilities where our data is managed, the PreVeil encrypted data is managed, are supported by U.S. persons, which is very important. And then last is a PreVeil feature. It's called Trusted Community. And with Trusted Community, you can set up your environment so that you can only share with third-party domains or email addresses that you have previously whitelisted. So if you want to be sure that you're only sharing ITAR with authorized individuals, those folks that you're supposed to be able to share ITAR content with, you can simply make sure they're included in that whitelist, and that way you can avoid any errors around setting ITAR to someone you're not intending to. Jamie, did I miss anything?
I would just add that, so PreVeil actually does meet the ITAR requirements in two different ways. You can either ensure that everything is stored exclusively in the US and only accessed by US persons. Otherwise, you need an export license. Or you can use true end-to-end encryption. FIPS, Vince mentioned that we use FIPS, which is important. But what's even more important is that encryption is truly end-to-end, where no third party can access the decryption keys. That means that in our example, even though we store everything encrypted in AWS, neither AWS nor PreVeil can decrypt your information. And that's a requirement if you're going to use the encryption carve-out rule to meet the ITAR.
Yep. Thanks, Jamie. Good stuff.
Vince, maybe you could just actually walk through, if someone is interested in learning more and they were to reach out, what does that first kind of conversation look like?
Sure. Like I said, you can go to sales@prevail.com. We'll be able to respond to that right away, or go to our website and request a demo or a quote. That also hits basically the same set of individuals, but we'll get back to you specifically as a result. But yeah, you can expect to be contacted by a CMMC expert on our team, someone that really understands with the type of solution, situation you're facing. And we'll ask you questions that will help us determine, first of all, to make sure that PreVeil will meet your use case requirements. And secondly, help you go through the process of doing a bit of scoping so that you know what you need to start with in terms of a platform and what can at least help you get started. You can always get started with PreVeil with a smaller number of users. If you're not sure exactly who is going to need to be in your ultimate compliance boundary, then you can add users later on. So we're flexible from that perspective. But if you come to us, we'll set up a session. You'll have a 30, 45-minute Zoom where you'll have a conversation. We can show a demo. We can discuss pricing. We usually follow up that session with Q&A. with some materials that we share with you that provide some detailed information about topics that are of most interest to you. And we can also provide budgetary quotes or formal quotes for PreVeil licenses as well. It's a pretty straightforward process. As a customer PreVeil, I just want to add that is where you really get access to the PreVeil team. I mean, you've met Noel, you'll have access to that compliance team at PreVeil. Jamie's part of our partner team. As I mentioned before, a lot of value from our partner team. You'll have full access to our partner team and getting their advice and help with dealing with any of PreVeil's partners. You'll also have a customer success manager that's assigned to your account. So you'll have access to them with any questions you've got, any assistance you need, any training, etc. And last, you'll have access to our tech support team. So if you have technical questions, want to help with a data migration, have a question about some functionality in the system, etc., that's always available to you as well. And as a customer, you also have access to our support database where you can type in any question and we can spit out really typically the right answer for you just in just a couple seconds.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Vince. Well, if there's no other questions, we'll wrap this up. I just want to say thank you, Noel, Jamie, Vince, for all your insight and sharing all your knowledge. So thank you so much for attending. We truly appreciate it. And we'll talk to you soon.